Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodhanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yasodhanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yasodhanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Vishnu Paramahamsa Acharya Austerities, Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Skam BDT Founder Charges Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Harinam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Padastaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastrata Deshatarine. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Narang Chaiva Narottamam Devam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nasta Prayeshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Idam Bhagavatam Nama Purana Brahma Samhitam Uttama Shloka Charitam Jagara Bhagavan Rashi Rashya Sayalukasya Dansang Sastainam. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th Canto, Chapter 7, entitled Sacrifice Performed by Daksha. Text number 14. Vidyā-tapo-vrata-dharān No, that's Chintamani verse, right? I mean, it's the Govinda. Vidyā-tapo-vrata-dharān mukhataḥ smarupa viprān. Vidyā-tapo-vrata-dharān mukhataḥ smamriprān. Vidyā-tapo-vrata-dharān mukhataḥ smamriprān. brahmātma-tattvam avitum prathamam tvam asrāk. brahmātma-tattvam avitum prathamam tvam asrāk tad brahmaṇān parama sarva-vipatsu vipastu tad brahmaṇān parama sarva-vipatsu pāsi pālaḥ paśūn vibho pragṛhīta-daṇḍaḥ pālaḥ paśūn vibho pragṛhīta-daṇḍaḥ vidyā-tapo-vrata-dharān mukhataḥ viprān brahmātma-tattvam avitum prathamam imam asrāk or asrāk tad brahmaṇān parama sarva-vipatsu pāsi pālaḥ paśūn vibho pragṛhīta-daṇḍaḥ vidyā-tapo-vrata-dharān mukhataḥ viprān brahmātma-tattvam avitum prathamam imam asrāk tad brahmaṇān parama sarva-vipatsu pāsi pālaḥ paśūn vibho pragṛhīta-daṇḍaḥ vidyā-tapo-vrata-dharān mukhataḥ viprān brahmātma-tattvam avitum prathamaṁ imam asrāk tad brahmaṇān parama sarva-vipatsu pāsi pālaḥ paśūn vibho pragṛhīta-daṇḍaḥ pālaḥ paśūn vibho pragṛhīta-daṇḍaḥ. Ladies? vidyā-tapo-vrata-dharān mukhataḥ viprān brahmātma-tattvam avitum prathamam imam asrāk tad brahmaṇān parama sarva-vipatsu pāsi pālaḥ paśūn vibho pragṛhīta-daṇḍaḥ. A good job despite the challenges. Vidya, learning. Tapa, austerities. Vrata, vows. Dharān, the followers. Mukhataḥ, from the mouth. Sma, was. Viprān, excuse me, the brahmanas. Brahmā, Lord Brahmā. Ātma-tattvam, self-realization. Avitum, to disseminate. Brahtamam, prathamam. First. Tvam, you. Asrāk, created. Tat, therefore. Brahmaṇān, the brahmanas. Parama, O great one. Sarva, all. Vipatsu, in dangers. Pāsi, you protect. Pālaḥ, like the protector. Paśūn, the animals. Vidyā, like. Vibho, O great one. Pragṛhīta, taking in hand. Daṇḍaḥ, a stick. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Lord Śiva, Vedanta Swami Prabhupada. My dear great and powerful Lord Śiva, you were created first from the mouth of Lord Brahmā in order to protect the brahmanas in pursuing education, austerities, vows, and self-realization. As protector of the brahmanas, you always protect the regulative principles they follow, just as a cowherd boy keeps a stick in his hand to give protection to the cows. Purport. The specific function of a human being in society, irrespective of his social status, is to practice control of the mind and senses by observing the regulative principles enjoined in the Vedic Shastras. Lord Śiva is called Pashupati because he protects the living entities in their developed consciousness, so that they may follow the Vedic system of varna and ashram. The word pashu refers to the animal as well as to the human entity. It is stated here that Lord Śiva is always interested in protecting the animals and the animalistic living entities who are not very advanced in the spiritual sense. It is also stated that the brahmanas are produced from the mouth of the Supreme Lord. We should always remember that Lord Śiva is being addressed as the representative of the Supreme Lord, Vishnu. In the Vedic literatures, it is described that the brahmanas are born from the mouth of the universal form of Vishnu. The Kshatriyas are born from his arms, the Vaishyas from his abdomen or waist, and the Shudras from his legs. In the formation of a body, the head is the principal factor. The brahmanas are born from the mouth of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to accept charity for worship of Vishnu and to spread Vedic knowledge. Lord Śiva is known as Pashupati, the protector of the brahmanas and other living entities. He protects them from attacks of non-brahmanas or uncultured persons who are against the self-realization process. Another feature of this word is that persons who are simply attached to the ritualistic portion of the Vedas and do not understand the situation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead are not any more advanced than animals. In the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is confirmed that even though one performs the rituals of the Vedas, if he does not develop a sense of Krishna consciousness, then all his labor in performing Vedic rituals is considered to be simply a waste of time. Lord Shiva's aim in destroying the Daksha Yajna was to punish Daksha, because by neglecting him, Lord Śiva, Daksha was committing a great offense. Lord Shiva's punishment was just like that of a cowherd boy who keeps a stick to frighten his animals. It is commonly said that to give protection to animals, a stick is needed because animals cannot reason and argue. Their reasoning and argument is argumentum ad patulam. Unless there is a rod, they do not obey. Force is required for the animalistic class of men, whereas those who are advanced are convinced by reasons, arguments, and scriptural authority. Persons who are simply attached to Vedic rituals without further advancement of devotional service or Krishna consciousness are almost like animals, and Lord Śiva, in charge of giving them protection and sometimes punishing them, as he punished Daksha. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnanachana Shalakaya Chakshun Tam Jena Tasmai Siddharvirma Gurum Guru Devachalam Pangamam Gayate Desi Gurum Tirtana Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Ishvaram. What a purport. This is not something that could be given justice, discussing just for the time that we have allotted. Today is also the appearance day of Sri Ramanujacharya, so we want to save some time afterwards to discuss something about his person. But here, anyway, we'll try to get through it and touch on a few points, and maybe we can learn something from what Srila Prabhupada has given us. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Yukta hara viharasya yukta chaitasa karmasu yukta swapna bodhasya yoga bhavati dukkha. That it's by practice, by regulation, that one can mitigate the miseries of material life. And Prabhupada is making that point here right in the beginning, that the human being in society, irrespective of his social status, is to practice control of the mind and senses by observing regulative principles enjoined in the Vedic Shastras. The Shastras are there to help us learn how to advance in human society. As Prabhupada points out here in the purport, those who are uncivilized, sometimes you have to use the rod. Just as Maharaj Pariksit had to use his sword when the personality of Kali tried to kill the bull. He was about to do his dastardly act when Maharaj Pariksit had to appear. So sometimes for certain classes of people, the rod, the stick has to be used, unfortunately. But that is the law of nature. For those who are more advanced, those who can understand that the human form of life is meant for regulating oneself so that we can make gradual advancements. That's why Krishna created the varnashram system, so that gradually we can advance from uncivilized life to a more civilized society. Unfortunately, due to the age of Kali, effects of Kali, things have become more and more degraded. And from Bhagavatam we understand it's not going to get any better. But there is a time period here where this knowledge can be shared. And that is the mission of the Krishna consciousness movement. And of those who are recognizing the great need of it, as was the case of Ramanujacharya, and we're going to touch on that. But in this case, Krishna is explaining, or he explains in Bhagavad Gita, yato dipo nivatasto, that as a lamp in a windless place doesn't waver, one whose mind is controlled always remains steady in his meditation on the Supreme. So the idea is that by controlling the senses, by regulating them in a proper fashion, in a civilized fashion, one can not be disturbed by the onslaught of material nature, because it's constantly trying to disturb our being, constantly trying to disturb our consciousness in so many ways. But Krishna advises in the Bhagavad Gita that if we simply recognize that when the mind is taking off, that we withdraw it under the control of the self. And in that way, one will not fall or become degraded from wherever, whenever it wanders. And we all have that experience, that is wandering constantly. As soon as we rise in the morning, the mind starts or wanting to take charge. And that was Arjun's also observation when he recognized that Krishna, Chanchalam Vimana Krishna Pramati Balavadridham, that my mind, it's like the raging wind. I can't control it. Who can be expected to go outside and try to control the raging wind with a little sack or a little net, right? And sometimes you see those fellows who are trying to catch little insects. You can't do that. It's not expected. But Krishna does say, asaṅkṣaya mahabaho manodur nigraham chalam. It is possible. It is possible by suitable practice and detachment. It is possible, but it's just a matter of doing it or practicing it in the proper way, as Prabhupada is indicating here, by regulative principles enjoined in the Vedic Shastras. So it is possible, but the general mass of people are not aware. They need to be educated. And for that reason, the Lord comes and He preserves those or establishes those principles, as He says in Bhagavad Gita. And He addresses those conditions which are symptoms of degradation. Here, Lord Śiva is doing that very thing. He's recognizing that not for his own self, for his own ego or something, but because Daksha was transgressing the Vedic principles, Lord Śiva had to act. And that is also symptomatic of brahmanas. When they see that there is that kind of situation in society, it's incumbent on them to rise up and give the proper instructions. Chanakya Pandit describes that the strength of a brahmana is his learning. So that is absent in the present society. Instead of engaging in righteous work, the greater society, for lack of understanding or leadership, education, or desire even, tattva brahma jignasa, the Bhagavata, the Vedic literatures tell us that the human form of life is meant for inquiry, but for the most part people are not interested in making inquiry these days. Instead, they're interested in increasing their sense gratification in whatever way possible. Therefore, as Prabhupada points out here, they must follow the Vedic system of varna and ashram. The paśū refers to the animal as well as to the human entity. It is stated here that Lord Śiva is always interested in protecting the animals and the animalistic living entities who are not very advanced in a spiritual sense. This is we've heard this repeatedly, the nature of the Vaishnava is that they're paradukha-dukhi. They're always concerned for the suffering of other living beings, and they're prepared to do whatever is necessary to help that suffering condition. Therefore, again, Krishna has divided the society in very scientific way, with the brahmanas doing certain work, the kshatriyas doing certain work, the vaishyas doing certain work, the sudras doing their occupational activities. And um, the brahmanas, as Prabhupada points out here, being born from the mouth of Vishnu, are there to accept charity. And it's for worship of Vishnu, not any other reason. Again, this idea has been distorted in the present age, where one who may be in a brahminical position as a teacher or as a responsible person, instead of actually being concerned for the welfare of the living beings, instead they're interested in simply fortifying and establishing their own gratification, their own position. This is not the goal of human life. That we simply engage in unrestricted enjoyment. Instead, one should inquire, or one should look, if he's actually intelligent and philosophically inclined, should inquire for that purposeful end which is not available. That which is not available in the mundane society. One should inquire for that which is not available in the mundane world. That subject matter is ātma-tattvam, knowledge of the self. That should be the purpose. And that should be the purpose of the Brahminical class, to teach that. And Ramanujacharya was such a good example. And we'll again touch upon that. But again, the purpose is that the human form of life is meant to be used for inquiry into Brahman, what is a spirit. And that which is not available from higher planets like Brahmaloka to Patala, and that is devotional service. Other things, they come of their own accord. We have that experience. Happiness and distress, they come of their own accord. But to have an opportunity to inquire about the absolute truth, that is a rare commodity. And it should be something that's practiced from the very get-go. As Prahlād Maharaj says, from the very beginning, one should be inquiring into this idea of who am I, and what is the purpose of human life, and give up all other sorts of frivolous activities. Another feature here Prabhupada points out of this word is that persons who are simply attached to the ritualistic portion of the Vedas and do not understand the situation of the personality of Godhead are not any more advanced than animals. So society now, because there is no proper head, because there's no proper leadership, these citizens have become increasingly degraded, to the point where it's very common to act in very degraded ways. Very common. There's no restriction. People can do as they like. But the human form of life, which is a very important vehicle, which is provided by material nature automatically, it should be used, and it's compared to a boat, where the captain of that boat is the spiritual teacher. And the Vedas are compared to the favorable winds, or the instructions, whereby we can get out of this cycle of repeated birth and death. It's not meant for us to linger here forever. There's no such thing as a comfortable, Srila Prabhupada comments that, what is that saying? It was a comment that Srila Prabhupada made about Krishna consciousness and living in the material world. They're ill together. They go ill together. But there's a comment that Prabhupada made, I forget. But the point is that we can try as we may to make some comfortable situation in this material world. It's not possible. Instead, one should wake up to the fact, utista jagrata prapya varani bodhita, that spiritual life is a very razor's edged activity. And if one, as we were discussing with Dr. Frank, that if you're inattentive in your practice in shaving, it's very easy to injure yourself. So spiritual life is like that. If we're not attentive to the general practices, then it's very easy to start laxing, and it's not important that I rise early. It's not so important that I chant my rounds attentively. It's not important that I offer my food to Krishna. It's not important that I associate with the Vaishnavas. These things are all, they become very if it happens, it happens. It's not secondary. It should be a primary activity. And if that is not done, then situations like in the case here of Daksha happen, that there will all get a rude awakening. And that will happen without a doubt. The need is to become careful in one's practices, so that every day one can become strengthened and enlivened. And of course, it's not an easy thing. There's always some challenges, especially the mind is not cooperating. But as Prabhupada points out here, persons who are simply attached to Vedic rituals without further advancement of devotional service or Krishna consciousness are simply like animals. And Lord Śiva, and we can pass this on to devotees who are in charge of giving them protection and sometimes punishing them, as he punished Daksha. So sometimes the devotees have to intervene in the lives of such persons, and that is what the Sankirtan movement is. Sometimes we have to wake them up to what's actually going on around them. Not in just the politics of society or the social conditions. But the reality is that this material world is a very temporary place. It could end. Padam padam nadvibadam natesham. At every step there's some danger. At every step, we don't know. We're going here and going there. We're driving hundreds and thousands of miles every day. We don't know. At any moment, something can happen. Someone may walk along and all of a sudden they're finished. That is the nature of the material world. It's a dangerous place. And to deal with that, one has to be always alert and prepared and practiced in your consciousness, so that when those challenges happen, we're not disturbed by them. There's a whole lot that can be said about this, but again, I wanted to save some time so that we could talk about the life of Sri Ramanujacharya. Are there any quick questions? Okay. So the reason we wanted to give a little extra time here to Sri Ramanujacharya is because he's a very profound preacher in the Vaishnava culture. Yes? A question? Okay. Please. We have one question.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the wonderful class. I have a two-part question. The first one is that we often talk about how to not be materially motivated and how we need to keep advancing in our practice. But I find that, as devotees, we're already following the regulative principles. We're in the association of devotee and community, but it's not always visible what those subtle material motivations might be. So if you could explain how to really recognize these subtleties in our practice, even while living with community. And the second part is that as people who are working outside in jobs, I find that when I'm doing research, it's not always possible to have this perspective of yukta vairagya, to dedicate it to Krishna in some way, because when you are engaged, when your mind is engaged in, say, research, then it is engaged in a material way of thinking. So how do you really direct it to spiritual, in a spiritual way?
Thank you. Very nice questions. Srila Prabhupada gives the example of taking the iron rod and putting it into the fire. So we're out and about and we're having to deal with material occupations, and sometimes you have to deal with difficult circumstances and challenges in the course of your work. But as long as you remain in the fire of devotion, that there's no diminution, there's no distraction. So it's certainly difficult, but if we can always remind ourselves that why am I performing this work? For what reason? And then we analyze, am I offering the fruits as Krishna prescribes in the literatures, that the devotees of the Lord, they offer, what is that verse? Yagyai Sankhya, no, Yagyashi Sashnasho Shanto Munchante Sarva Kilvishai Bunjate Te Tugam Papam Yepachantat Makaranat. If you're engaging in your work and you're simply enjoying the fruits for yourself, then you're incurring some reaction. You'll feel it. There'll be an effect on your mind, your association, your ability to perform your work. That will happen without a doubt, and we can all recognize that. That you have to be intelligent enough to see. So that happens. So we have to be very careful in our execution and make sure that we don't compromise in what we're doing. You don't compromise your japa, you don't compromise your simple service, whatever it may be. You don't compromise your reading time. You don't compromise your chanting. You have to be very careful about those things. And it's recognizable. You start losing a taste for association, you start losing a taste for chanting, you start losing the enthusiasm that needs to be there to practice, to associate with people, Vaishnavas, that is. We're not interested in that asat sangatag. We don't want that asat association. We want this sat association. So those things, they become apparent. It's visible. You lose your taste for hearing and chanting and associating in the proper way, and your service itself becomes lax. So it's a matter of paying attention to the details, even the finest details. There was one case in Chicago, I remember years ago, when Prabhupada was there with Kishore Kishori, And Prabhupada was on the Vyasasana, and after the artik, they offered him some plate of prasadam from the deity's plates. The deity's plates were actually brought to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada had the plates, and he was sampling from Krishna's plate. It was quite incredible. But Prabhupada tasted the halava, and he made a face of his face sort of contorted. Who cooked this? And someone said, "Oh, this Mataji, bring her here." So they brought her here, there in front of Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada said, "You cooked this?" And she said, "Yes, Srila Prabhupada." "Well, you put in salt instead of sugar." And she said, "Oh, Krishna's mercy." No. You don't say like that. And Prabhupada, he was like Nrsimhadev. No! Your foolishness. Your inattention. So we have to be careful and in our execution, whether it be the smallest detail, whether we're making a garland, because it sits on Krishna's body. It's a personal ornament, right, to Krishna's body. And so we have to make sure that it doesn't stain his clothes, it doesn't make some discomfort for him, or if we're making some preparation that he has to eat something that is not offerable. No, so one has to be attentive to the details so that we don't suffer in that direction. Okay, let's just say a few things about Sri Ramanujacharya. There's a whole lot to be said here, and I know we don't have time for everyone, so for those who need to go because your engagement, your service doesn't allow it, that's fine. But we'll just have to read a few things here and get the crux of this wonderful personality. Sri Ramanujacharya was the Acharya of the Sri Sampradaya, which was founded by Lakshmi Devi, and was influenced by the Alwars. We have some South Indian devotees present? Yes, so we have some people who know more than I do. But Shamchandra Prabhu, he left. We should have asked him. But anyway, he was heavily influenced by the Alwars, the 12 Alwars, who are great poets. And they wrote many poetic pieces glorifying the worship of Lord Vishnu through bhakti, which is very important because during that time period the impersonalists of Sankaracharya were very, very prominent. So he taught Vashishtha-dvaitavad, which is a qualified oneness, qualified dualism. And what that means is that there's a oneness, there's a Brahmān. In the Mayavad tradition, the Sankacharyas, they taught that everything is one, that Brahmān is one, and there's no differentiation. But he was teaching qualified oneness, meaning that they're one in spirit, Brahmān. But within that spirit, there's variety. So there's the Supreme, the Absolute Truth, there's the living being, and then there's material nature. So Sat Chit Ananda. So he was a very powerful preacher, and throughout his time, he appeared in a place just south of Madras, which is now Chennai, in Kanchipuram. And he, from his very early age, was a very profound scholar. Even at the very tender age of 8 and 9, he was very scholarly in his activities, in his sharing. He eventually went to a school run by one impersonalist. And again, unfortunately, in much of those schools in the South, they were conducted by impersonalists because of the prominence of the philosophy. He went to a school headed by Yadava Prakash, which was a very famous scholar, but he was attracted to the Mayavad tradition. And immediately there was a conflict between he and his teacher, because the philosophy of Mayavad is that there's absolute oneness, that there's no differentiation, there's no duality. And Ramanujacharya had to sort of stomach all of this. It's just like sometimes when we have to listen to people, they talk about spiritual subject matter and their conversation is really scrambled. It doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't really mean anything. And in that way, he also felt like that. That what he was speaking, he specifically pointed that out, that Shankaracharya's philosophy had no real meaning to it. So one day Yadava Prakash he asked Ramanujacharya to massage his body with oil, as is the case with brahmacharis. They offer service to the guru in the school, and they offer many types of service, and one of those services was to massage his body with oil. And as he was engaging his service, one disciple of Yadava Prakash came and brought up a subject matter that they had been discussing earlier from the Chandogya Upanishad. It was a verse, Kapyasam Pundarikaksam Evam Akshini. And this verse is all about describing the lotus eyes of the Lord. But Yadava Prakash, because he was influenced by this Mayavad, his interpretation was not totally different. His interpretation was that this Kapi Asham refers to the rear end of a monkey. So in other words, he was comparing the eyes of Lord Vishnu, the Lord, to the rear end of a monkey. And as he was discussing this, Ramanuja, he started crying, and tears were coming from his eyes, and they were falling upon the feet of his guru, and his guru was stunned by this. Why are you so emotional? And Ramanuja stated that, "Oh Master, it causes me such suffering to hear this terrible explanation from a great soul like you yourself. How sinful it is to compare the beautiful lotus eyes of the Lord to the posterior of a monkey. I never expected to hear such a thing from my teacher." Yadava Prakash was angered by this challenge. "I'm also aggrieved, student, you impudent one. From an inferior who's not praiseworthy. If you are so proud, you think yourself a better teacher than me, let me hear your explanation of this verse." So Ramanuja said, "Okay, by your mercy it is possible." Immediately he took this humble attitude. So he went on to explain that he breaks it up in a very nice way. That he said another meaning is possible. Ka-api can be taken as kam jalam bibati, that which drinks up the water, or in other words, the sun. The word isham also means to blossom. So the whole word kapi isham, kapi asham, can be understood as that which blossoms under the sun, or in other words, the lotus flower. So in this way, the Lord's eyes are compared to the beautiful petals of a lotus. And when Yadav Prakash heard this, he was surprised. But he thought, oh, this boy is really, really clever. He's going to be some issue. We're going to have some issues later on, which he did. There were other instances where finally Yadava Prakash was so angered that he told the boy to leave. And he warned that this boy will eventually establish dualistic philosophy of devotion, which is contrary to what we're teaching here. This must not be allowed. And so he made some plan that he would kill this boy. So he told his followers, let's make a plan. We'll invite him that we're all going to the Ganga. We're going to go up north to the Ganges, and we're going to take bath there. And while we're there, we'll throw him into the Ganga. And afterwards, we'll take bath to get rid of the sin. This is their mentality. You see, unbelievable. So, unfortunately for them, Govinda, who was a cousin of Ramanuja, happened to be in the area. And he overheard what they were saying. So he warned Ramanuja that, oh, you have to immediately run away. So Ramanuja, he was only in his early teens, just a young kid. So he took off into the jungle, not knowing where to go, never having been anywhere, not knowing what to do. And of course the forest is full of dangers, we know that. So he took off. And so the plan of Yadava Prakash was foiled. But this boy is out in the forest, and he doesn't know where he's going. He's thinking, I need to go back to Kanchipuram. And so he took rest under a tree, and not knowing, there could be dangerous animals, etc. Anything may happen. But then when he awoke, there was a hunter and his wife there. And this hunter and wife asked him, where are you going? Well, he said, I don't know. I guess I'm going to go back to Kanchipuram. But I don't know how to get there. Because when he took off into the jungle, he was just running. So they said, okay, well, stick with us and we'll travel together. So they traveled for some time, and then finally one evening he took rest. And when he awoke, the couple were gone. And he happened to be just there in front of Kanchipuram. And so it dawned on him that this must have been Lakshmi Narayan, who came as a hunter and wife, and they led him back to safety, back to where he wanted to come. So these kinds of experiences were there throughout his life, not just occasional. But he was a very empowered preacher as well. There's a very interesting story about how he was also a ghostbuster. People have heard about ghosts. So in this case, there was a princess who was haunted by a ghost. This was in Kanchi. And they tried to chant all sorts of mantras. They couldn't do anything about getting rid of it. They asked Yadava Prakash, again his teacher, who by then had found out that Ramanuja had foiled his or escaped their assassination plan. But he didn't say anything. He just stayed quiet. But he could appreciate the humility of the boy because he realized that Ramanuja also found out. But Ramanuja didn't say anything. So they asked Yadava Prakash to come and chant some shlokas, mantras, secret this and that, whatever. And again, nothing happened. But the ghost finally said, bring this young boy, Ramanuja, and then I'll leave. So they called for Ramanujacharya again. And by this time, Yadava Prakash was really fed up with Ramanuja. Why this boy, again, he's diminishing my position. But Ramanuja came and he spoke to the ghost. He said, I will leave this body if you kindly place your lotus feet on my head. Such was the purity of Ramanuja's devotion that even the evil fiend could understand the benefit of taking shelter of such a great soul. So with the permission of his teacher, Ramanuja placed both his feet on the girl's head, and the ghost disappeared and went off into a banyan tree. And when the king of Kanchi heard this, he immediately expressed his gratitude. Of course, Yadava Prakash was not too happy about it. There's three main vows which are very important in Ramanuja's life. And these that he got from his association with Jamunacharya. Jamunacharya preceded Ramanuja in the Sri Sampradaya. And it was by Jamunacharya's work that Ramanuja became inspired. And at the end of Ramanuja's life, they noticed on Ramanuja's hand that his first three fingers were bent. And Ramanuja asked, well, why is this so? Is there something, was this normal? And they said, no, this is unusual. So at that point, Ramanuja, he made three vows in the presence of Jamunacharya there. His first vow was, remaining fixed in devotion to Lord Vishnu, I shall free the people from illusion by spreading the glories of the Lord throughout the world. And at that, one of his fingers that had been clenched was raised. The second was, to establish that there is no truth beyond Lord Vishnu, I will write Sri Bhasya, a commentary on Vedanta Sutra, which is very, very important, which is very important in his latter-day preaching. And then the third one was that in order to show respect to the sage Parasara, who was so wonderfully described in the glories of the Lord in Vishnu Purana, I shall name one learned Vaishnav after him. And that learned Vaishnav carried on the tradition after Ramanujacharya left this world. So just to say one other couple little wonderful things about his preaching. He eventually converted Yadava Prakash, his teacher who tried to assassinate him, into a Vaishnav. And it was by the urging of Yadava Prakash's elderly mother that you should go to the temple of Lord Varadaraj, who is the Lord of the temple there in Kanchipuram, and pray to him and find out what you should do, because Yadava Prakash was saying that his mind has been very disturbed lately. He can't think straight. And that is a very good indicator that when our minds become very disturbed, it's because there's some offense. Some offense has been not performed, but acted. We've done something to create that disturbance in our mind. So Yadava Prakash recognized that. So he went and inquired from different persons. He went to the head pujari there in Kanchi. He said, I'm very troubled at heart and can find no peace. So the pujari Kanchipurna, I told him, go home and pray to Lord Bharadraj. And the following day, Kanchi Purna immediately began to describe the greatness of Ramanuja. And hearing this, Yadava Prakash decided he would go to Ramanuja at the ashram and discuss these scriptures with him. And that night, as he was sleeping, again he had this dream that he should go. And when he did that, he was struck by the young Acharya's purity and effulgence. Ramanuja received his former teacher with courtesy, and I can see the markings of tilak. This was Yadava Prakash's comment. I can see these markings, the emblems of the lotus on your body. In South India, they have these different initiations that are given to the priests, and you can go there and witness it. In Kanchi, for instance, the child may be very 6, 7, 8 years old, and he has to sit there in front of a fire, and they put a brand on his shoulders. A brand is put into a fire, and it's put on the arms, the chakras, and different symbols. And it's quite an event to see this young little child being initiated that way into the Brahminical order. Finally, this devotee Yadava Prakash, he went to Yatiraj, Ramanuja, and he had some questions about the superiority or the position of Lord Vishnu, because again he was Mayavadi. And so he had some questions about where in the Shastra does it establish the position of Vishnu. So Ramanuja said, well, go and see my disciple. Go and see my disciple Kuresh. And so Kuresh, a disciple of Ramanuja, began to speak. He cited numerous verses from the literatures, the Vedas, Upanishads, Puranas. And after Yadava Prakash heard this, his disciple is sharing this, he immediately surrendered and took the shelter of Sri Ramanuja. And then again, there's so much information throughout his life, how he would debate different Pandyas. He wanted to debate the Pandyas of Puri about establishing the Pancharatriki system that we use to worship of Jagannath, which they were not doing. And so when he asked if he could have a conference, the head priests of the Puri temple were very worried. What is Ramanuja going to come and do? He's going to disturb our whole scene that we have here in Puri, which was not exactly correct. And so in order to avert a big situation, when Ramanuja went to bed that night, when he woke up, he found himself 300 miles away. So Jagannath had kindly transported him 300 miles away so that there would not be this disturbance with the Pandyas of Jagannath. So these sorts, of course he understood what the reasoning was, because they weren't prepared at that time to hear this and establish the Pancharatriki system of worship as given to us by Narada Muni that we use to worship our own deities. So there's again many fantastic things about his life. And finally, this is in his final days, turning to his disciples, he said, "This is my second self." And this was that he told his disciples he was going to be leaving this world. So his disciples were quite worried. What are we going to do? We can't. We're going to commit suicide. We can't live without you. So Sri Ramanuja said that he ordered an expert sculptor to be brought there to carve a stone deity in his likeness. After 3 days the work was complete. Then the deity was bathed with water from the Kaveri, which is the river there, and installed upon a newly constructed altar. Yati Raj, which was Ramanuja, then came slowly up to the deity and filled it with his potency by breathing into the crown of the head of the deity. Turning to his disciples, he said, "This is my second self. When I cast off this body, you may worship this form instead of me." He sat down, put his head on his disciples, Govinda's head, and left his body. See Ramanujacharya ki jai. Quite an interesting ending.